They didn't salute. They smirked. Called her a Clipboard Commando the second she walked in. Said she probably fought more emails than enemies. But when the compression sleeve on her arm shifted just slightly, and the faint arc of a branded mark showed beneath, the room forgot how to laugh. The sun hadn't cleared the ridgeline when Sergeant Emery Callen stepped into Hangar 4C, the combat training wing at Redstone Ridge Base. It smelled like over-chlorinated mats and the kind of ambition that tried too hard. Dust hung in fluorescent light like smoke that forgot how to settle. Callen moved like someone who didn't need to prove she belonged. 41 years old. PT shirt faded into soft gray. Duffel stitched. Restitched. And lived in boots not parade shined, but shaped by real terrain the kind maps didn't bother to name. She didn't look left or right, didn't scan the room, didn't posture. Behind the check-in desk, Corporal Nate Bishop glanced up just long enough to say, "Scans on the right. Green light to proceed." Callen pressed her thumb to the cracked biometric pad. The light blinked, held steady. Green. Bishop squinted at the screen like the name triggered something old and just out of reach. "You on the sparring roster was told I'm cleared," she replied. "Calm as a weather report." He shrugged, more curious than suspicious. "Main floor's open, gears on the left." She nodded once and stepped through the gate, boots echoing, then vanishing beneath the gym's ambient thrum fans humming, weights clanking. Radio static somewhere in the back. Redstone was waking up, near the weight benches. Spence McCall, Tyler Vex, and Darren Slade stood in loose formation, that relaxed kind of arrogance reserved for men who'd never missed a meal or a Monday lift. Late 20s, muscles for Instagram, not for evacuating teammates under fire. Spence caught sight of her first, tracking her walk across the polished floor. Well. We got new blood or somebody's mom looking for the coffee line. Vex grinned. Definitely logistics. Bet she files reports about push-ups instead of doing them. Darren chuckled, lifting a dumbbell with more drama than weight. Whole Clipboard Commando vibe. She's probably got a certificate in admin warfare. They laughed that empty, frictionless kind of laughter that only echoes when no one's watching. But someone was watching, and she didn't even have to look their way. Not yet. Equipment clanked, fans whirred. But near the far wall, the silence around Sergeant Emery Callen grew thicker. She set her duffel down with the kind of practiced precision that came from repetition, not ritual, not nerves, just lived-in discipline. Her hand wraps were plain, black, frayed at the edges. Nothing regulation issued. Just tools that had followed her across years. Continents and missions she never logged. She began wrapping her wrists slow, methodical, automatic. The kind of movement that said, "I've done this in worse places." With less light, under fire. Then, her compression sleeve shifted. Just a little, but enough, underneath. Against pale, weathered skin, a faint arc of vertical marks burned into flesh. Not tattoos, not decoration, too clean, too evenly spaced. 8 perfect lines, shadow marks the kind whispered about in Black Book missions, where fire replaced ink and medals were never issued. Spence McCall squinted. "What the hell is that? Branding!" He meant it as a joke, but his voice cracked halfway through. Emery didn't look up. Didn't need to. Not exactly a senior fitness class. "Grandma," he called out louder, forcing the grin back into his face like a shield. She tightened the wrap on her left wrist and started on her right. "Good," she said, voice level. "Calm," sharp enough to split silence. Those are usually too easy. Vex chuckled, but there was no weight behind it. "All right, chair yoga plus sarcasm, we're in for a show. I wasn't planning to sit down," she added. That landed harder than they expected. The air shifted a small, uncomfortable silence where the punchline didn't stick. Darren Slade stepped forward, covering uncertainty with fake bravado. "Look, no offense, lady, but this isn't beginner's night. "You sure you're not in over your head?" That's when she looked up. No scowl, no flare of pride. Just a steady, unblinking gaze, the kind that came from staring at things most people never return from. Then it should be interesting. As she adjusted the wrap again, more marks came into view, burned into the skin with surgical clarity. Darren saw them this time. All of them. And something cold flickered behind his chest. "What's the wrist art?" he asked, trying to sound amused, but it came out small. Vex leaned closer. "Kill count," he muttered, but the joke fell flat, even from him. "You binge Netflix or something?" Spence tried again, louder now, too loud. Emery stood, fully wrapped, movements fluid and quiet. She didn't argue. She didn't explain. She just looked at them, not with anger or judgment, but the kind of quiet patience usually reserved for people waiting on others to catch up. "Let me know," she said, stepping toward the sparring mats, "when you're ready to find out what they really mean." The laughter lingered, but it was thinner now, fragile, like the kind you hear before walking through a graveyard. They thought she was just making a point. They had no idea the point was already burned into her skin. Sergeant Emery Callen stepped onto the mat with the kind of quiet that made noise feel unnecessary. She didn't stretch for show, didn't bounce, didn't posture, just jump rope, steady, hypnotic, shoulder rolls, deep squats, slow neck rotations, movements that said, "I'm not warming up. I'm checking systems." The kind of warm-up you only learn when failure once meant someone didn't come home, near the bench press. Tyler Vex nudged Spence McCall in the ribs. "Look at this middle school PE. We're gonna send her back to admin with a sprained ego." Spence chuckled, but it came out dry. His confidence had been bleeding out in drops since she walked in. Still, he grinned for the guys. Hope she stretched her typing fingers. From the equipment room, Staff Sergeant Cole Merrick emerged, clipboard in hand, shoulders squared like a cinder block in uniform. He'd run Hangar 4C for 3 years, knew every rookie ego and broken vet story by smell alone. "Live sparring's open," he called across the gym. "Sign-ups on the board, light contact only, respect rank, and if you can't follow rules, don't bother stepping on the mat." Emery finished her warm-up, walked over, and wrote her name first line. Clean script, no drama, just intention. Merrick scanned the board, his brow ticked. "You cleared for this." She met his eyes, unblinking, Tier 4 operative. Clearance confirmed. Spence had wandered closer. "She actually signed up," he said, eyebrows raised. "This should be fun." Emery turned slowly, looked at him, not with irritation, just that same quiet scan, like she was reading a blueprint no one else could see. "You're welcome," she said, "to test whatever theory you're working on." Spence tried to hold his grin, but it flickered. Still, he stepped up. "All right, Grandma, let's see what you've got." Merrick looked between them, jaw set. Don't embarrass the uniform. It wasn't clear who he meant. They squared off center mat. Spence bounced on his toes, rolled his shoulders, let out a long breath like a prize fighter on pay-per-view. Every move had flash, but no depth. Callen still, loose hands, even weight. Like she could either stay motionless or strike like a trap snapping shut. "Go easy on me," Spence said, still performing. The timer beeped. He danced, light jabs, no contact, just feeling her out, fishing for reaction. She gave him nothing, just adjusted her angle, silently tracking his rhythm. Then he snapped a hook, fast, but she was faster. In one movement, a pivot, a hip drop, and suddenly Spence was airborne. He hit the mat like a sack of ammo, hard, flat, air gone from his chest. The gym froze. No sound but breath and disbelief. He lay there, stunned, sat up slow. Lucky shot. He muttered, but the way he rubbed his ribs, he knew better. They reset. He charged, low shoulder, full weight. Callen sidestepped, hooked his leg, used his momentum against him again, this time pinning him flat. Knee on chest. Wrist locked at an angle God didn't intend. Tap, she said. 3 slaps. Fast, sincere. She let go instantly. Stepped back like it was just a drill. It was over. But something in the room had changed. And for the first time, Spence knew it. She didn't fight for ego. She fought because she had once lost people who didn't make it home. Spence McCall sat on the bench, shoulder rotating slowly, trying to piece together how someone who looked like a middle-aged desk officer had just dropped him twice in under 2 minutes. Tyler Vex leaned against the wall, unusually quiet. Darren Slade was staring at the mat like it had changed shape. They weren't joking anymore, and no one was calling her grandma. Emery Callen stood at the edge of the sparring zone, calmly adjusting her wraps with the same quiet ritual she brought to every movement. Her breathing steady, her expression unreadable. As she pulled her sleeve down to re-wrap, more of the shadow marks came into view, lines burned into her skin with surgical exactness. Not ink, not art, record. That's when the gym door hissed open, and Major Franklin Rhodes stepped inside, pressed uniform, clipboard in hand. 54 years old, and built like someone who'd never gotten soft, just heavier with history. He didn't speak, didn't need to. Years in the field had trained his senses for something no training manual ever covered: the smell of tension. And right now, it hung in the gym like smoke. His eyes scanned quickly. Spence winded, Darren rattled, Vex pale. And across the mat, a woman kneeling, adjusting a wrap with the kind of stillness that came from repetition or regret. Rhodes walked over to Staff Sergeant Cole Merrick, who was studying his clipboard like it might offer answers to a question no one had asked yet. "What's the situation?" Sergeant Rhodes asked, low and clipped. "Unexpected sign-in on the roster. Says she's Tier 4 cleared." Rhodes took the board, read the name Callen. "A shift." Not dramatic, but enough. The kind of flicker you only noticed if you'd seen faces tighten before a briefing they weren't supposed to attend. He looked up and saw her. Not just a woman in gray PTs, not just a sparring partner, but a ghost from files that never reached official channels. She was pulling her sleeve down again, and this time, Rhodes counted 8 marks, maybe more. His jaw set. He'd seen those before, in classified debriefs that had since been deleted, in after-action reports that ended with lines like "subject untraceable," in the kind of briefings where mission patches had no name, just color codes across the room. Vex tried to joke too loud. Too late. She's got those things all over her arms, real dramatic, like some kind of warrior priestess, or Rhodes cut him off. His voice didn't rise. It sliced. "Do you boys have any idea what you're looking at, Silence?" Vex blinked. Spence looked down. Darren pretended to fix his laces. Rhodes crossed the gym, stopped a few feet from her. "Mind if I ask where you're stationed these days?" Sergeant She looked up. "No challenge, no posture, off the grid." She said, "Freelance Tier 4. Reinstated 6 months ago." He nodded. "Of course she was. They finally unlocked your file." "Huh." She gestured faintly to the gym. "Enough to walk through doors like this again." He turned, looked at the 3 young men now watching like civilians at a live fire demo. "Those marks you were mocking," Rhodes said. "Loud enough for them all to hear. They're not tattoos, they're records. Each one a confirmed elimination, from operations that never officially happened." You mocked her, laughed at the marks on her arm. But what if every one of those lines was a life ended to save others? "They're not decoration," Major Rhodes said. "Not some tough guy patch you pick up at a tattoo parlor." His voice carried like gravel dragged through velvet. Every syllable hit harder than the last. Each mark a confirmed elimination. From black missions that never made it to your training syllabus. Not ink. Scar tissue. Burned in by flame because ink doesn't survive when everything else around you is fire. The gym had gone completely still. Even the radio chatter in the corner seemed to hold its breath. Sergeant Callen ran point for Phantom Recon Unit 12. Deep insertion. No attribution. Missions that happened in places even Google doesn't pretend to know. Vex whispered. Like real combat, Rhodes didn't blink. No, like real war. The kind where one mistake doesn't cost you a grade. It costs you a unit. His eyes scanned the young men. Now visibly smaller. You think she walked in here to prove something? She's got more confirmed kills than most infantry companies log in a year-long deployment. Emery Callen, meanwhile, had finished taping her rap. She zipped up her duffel. Not once had she defended herself. She didn't need to. The truth had spoken. We didn't know. Darren Slade muttered. No, Rhodes said quietly. You didn't. And that's the first lesson worth remembering. He looked at each of them in turn. Out here, you never know who's standing next to you. The mechanic on your Humvee might have survived Fallujah. The woman fixing your comms might have cleared kill zones while you were still in high school. He turned back to Emery. She was already at the threshold. Still sharp. Sergeant, he asked. She paused. Didn't turn fully just enough. Rust was never the problem. She said, and with that, she walked out, leaving behind a room full of men who'd just been humbled by silence. Rhodes exhaled. You'll remember this morning, he said. The question is, will it make you better? The door hissed shut behind him. Out in the parking lot, Emery Callen walked alone, the Montana sunrise at her back, casting long shadows behind her. The hangar looked exactly the same, but inside, something had shifted. Respect wasn't given. It was earned. One quiet moment at a time.